What if I told you that the biggest economic showdown of the 21st century is not happening on battlefields or in diplomatic meetings? It's happening in the invisible world of currencies, reserves, and digital assets. While most people are focused on Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods, there's a much bigger strategy unfolding behind the scenes. A three-pronged approach using gold, cryptocurrency, and trade policy that could fundamentally reshape the global financial order. This isn't about politics. This is about understanding one of the most fascinating economic experiments happening in real time. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Trump is stockpiling Bitcoin, what's really happening with America's gold reserves, and how these moves connect to the escalating trade war with China. Before we dive into the specifics, we need to understand what's really at stake here. For the past 75 years, the U.S. dollar has been the world's reserve currency. What does that mean? It means when countries trade with each other, whether it's oil from Saudi Arabia to China or electronics from Japan to Germany, they typically use dollars to complete those transactions. This gives the United States enormous power. It's like owning the world's currency exchange booth. Every time someone uses dollars for international trade, it reinforces America's economic influence. But here's the thing, the dominance is eroding. China has been working for over a decade to reduce global dependence on the dollar, a process called de-dollarization. They've been increasing gold reserves, creating alternative payment systems, developing their digital yuan, and encouraging trade partners to settle transactions in currencies other than the dollar. As of late 2024, the dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves dropped to 58%, down from 68% just a decade ago. That might not sound dramatic, but in the world of reserve currencies, that's a seismic shift. Enter Trump's strategy, a multi-layered response that is trying to defend dollar dominance while simultaneously creating alternative sources of American financial power through gold revaluation and cryptocurrency reserves. It's bold, it's unprecedented, and it's happening right now. Let's start with what everyone can see, the tariffs. In February 2025, Trump imposed a 10% tariff on Chinese goods, citing fentanyl concerns and border security under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. By April, that number had jumped dramatically. So it all came to a head on what Trump dubbed Liberation Day, April 2nd, 2025. That was the moment he officially announced reciprocal tariffs on almost every single U.S. trading partner. But if you look at China specifically, things escalated incredibly fast. It started back in February with a 10% baseline tariff, which then doubled to 20% in March. By the time April rolled around, and after some retaliatory back and forth, the rate spiked all the way to 145%. And just when it seemed like it hit a ceiling, October brought a threat of another 100% on top of that. Now, at first glance, this seems like simple protectionism, trying to bring manufacturing back to America by making Chinese goods more expensive. And that's part of it. But there's a deeper strategic goal, forcing China into negotiation while accelerating the diversification of supply chains away from Chinese manufacturing dominance. Here's what actually happened. American companies did start moving production, but not primarily to America. They moved to Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, and India. According to Wells Fargo data, the proportion of supplier volume for manufacturing in China, Hong Kong, and Korea declined from 90% to 50% over the past decade. This accelerated dramatically in 2025. Project 44 data shows China's trade increased 29% to Indonesia, 23% to Vietnam, and 19% to India. Meanwhile, container trade volume to the U.S. from Vietnam rose 23%, Thailand 9.3%, and Indonesia 5.4%. China responded with its own, tariffs at one point reaching 125% on U.S. goods, and export controls on rare earth elements, which are critical for electronics, defense systems, and semiconductors. China controls roughly 70% of the global supply of these materials. This created several leverage points. By October 2025, Trump and Xi reached a temporary trade deal in South Korea. The terms were significant. China agreed to suspend rare earth export controls, remove retaliatory tariffs on U.S. agricultural products, and purchase at least 25 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans annually through 2028. In exchange, the U.S. reduced tariffs on Chinese goods to 30%, from 145%, and suspended various export controls. But here's the key insight. These tariffs aren't just about trade. They're about creating economic pressure while Trump builds up alternative sources of financial power through gold and crypto. The tariffs are the visible weapon, while gold and crypto are the strategic reserves being accumulated in the background. Think of it like this. The tariffs are the boxer's jab, keeping your opponent busy and off balance, while gold and crypto are the knockout punches being prepared. Now let's talk about something that surprised a lot of people. Trump going all in on cryptocurrency. In March 2025, Trump signed an executive order establishing the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve and U.S. Digital Asset Stockpile. This was unprecedented. Never before has the U.S. government formally treated cryptocurrency as a strategic reserve asset. Here's how it works. The Strategic Bitcoin Reserve consists of Bitcoin that the U.S. government acquired through criminal and civil asset forfeitures. The government currently holds over 207,000 Bitcoin, worth approximately $17 billion at March 2025 prices. The executive order directs that this Bitcoin will not be sold. Instead, it will be maintained as a reserve asset, like gold. The U.S. digital asset stockpile is separate and includes other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, XRP, Solana, and Cardano, also acquired through asset forfeiture. Unlike Bitcoin, these assets may potentially be sold under Treasury Department discretion. But there's more. Senator Cynthia Lummis introduced the Bitcoin Act, which proposes that the Treasury Department directly purchase up to 1 million Bitcoin over 5 years, aiming to hold approximately 5% of the total Bitcoin supply. At April 2025 prices, this would be worth around $88 billion. The stated goal? To position Bitcoin as digital gold, a reserve asset for the 21st century. Now, why is this strategically important in competition with China? China has taken the opposite approach. They've banned Bitcoin and created a fully centralized, state-controlled digital currency, the digital yuan, ECNY. This gives China's government complete visibility and control over transactions. It's money that can be programmed, monitored, and potentially frozen by the state. The digital yuan is already being rolled out in cross-border trade with partner nations. In October 2023, PetroChina completed the first international crude oil trade settled in digital yuan, purchasing 1 million barrels. China has also created an alternative to SWIFT called CEPS, Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, which now has over 1,700 banks signed up globally. This is China's de-dollarization strategy in action, creating financial infrastructure that bypasses the dollar entirely. Trump's crypto strategy is a countermove. By establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve, the U.S. is saying, we're not going to create a centralized digital dollar that gives government complete control. Instead, we're backing decentralized cryptocurrency that operates outside of any single government's control. This appeals to countries that are nervous about China's surveillance-heavy approach, but also want alternatives to dollar dependence. It's positioning America as the champion of financial freedom versus China's financial control. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has emphasized that dollar-backed stablecoins could reinforce the dollar's primacy by creating new demand for U.S. treasuries. About 80% of dollar-backed stablecoin flows happen outside the United States, particularly in developing countries with unstable currencies. USDT, Tether, the largest stablecoin with a $158 billion market cap, sees about $142 billion circulating globally. Standard Chartered projects that by 2028, two-thirds of global stablecoin activity will originate from emerging markets. This is Trump's digital dollarization strategy, using stablecoins pegged to the U.S. dollar to extend dollar influence into countries where traditional banking is failing or where China is pushing its digital yuan. In July 2025, Trump signed the Genius Act, creating the first federal regulatory framework for stablecoins, ensuring their stability through strong reserve requirements. This was marketed as making America the crypto capital of the world. The strategic logic is clear. If China is building centralized digital currency infrastructure to bypass the dollar, America will back decentralized crypto infrastructure that keeps the dollar relevant in the digital age. And now we get to perhaps the most intriguing and least understood part of Trump's strategy: gold. The United States currently holds approximately 8,133 metric tons, 261 million troy ounces, of gold reserves, the largest official gold holdings of any country in the world. Most of it sits in Fort Knox, Kentucky. But here's the weird part. The U.S. Treasury officially values this gold at $42.22 per ounce. That's not a typo. $42 per ounce. The current market price? Around $3,000 per ounce as of late 2025. This creates a massive valuation gap. At the official valuation, the U.S. gold reserves are worth about $11 billion. At current market prices, they're worth approximately $784 billion. That's a difference of $773 billion. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said the administration plans to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet. While he later clarified he didn't specifically mean repricing gold reserves, the speculation won't die down. Gold revaluation has historical precedent. In 1934, during the Great Depression, President Franklin D. Roosevelt dramatically revalued gold from 20 to 35 per ounce, effectively devaluing the dollar by 40% to combat deflation and reduce the debt burden. If Trump were to revalue gold to current market prices, it would add roughly $750 billion to the federal balance sheet overnight. And here's the critical part. This wouldn't be a loan. It wouldn't increase the national debt. It would simply be recognizing the real value of assets the government already owns. At current gold prices of $3,000 per ounce, every $4,000 increase in the price of gold generates an additional $1 trillion in potential funding. Some analysts speculate Trump could go even further, revaluing gold to $10,000, $20,000, or even higher as part of a monetary reset. At $20,000 per ounce, those 261 million ounces would be worth $5.2 trillion, significantly reducing the burden of the $36 trillion national debt. But why would gold prices rise that dramatically? Here's where China comes back into the picture. China has been aggressively buying gold. After Russia was hit with sanctions in 2022 and its dollar and euro assets were frozen, countries around the world started thinking, if the U.S. can freeze Russian assets, could our dollar holdings be vulnerable too? The answer is yes. In July 2025, Trump signed legislation that potentially allows the U.S. Treasury to seize or freeze Chinese foreign exchange reserves in cases of national security threats, pandemic reparations, or Taiwan-related aggression. China's response? Accelerate de-dollarization, increase gold holdings, build alternative payment systems. As of 2025, over 30% of China's trade in goods and services is conducted in yuan, compared with 14% in 2019. China has extended 4.5 trillion yuan, $630 billion in swap lines to 32 central banks, creating a global financial safety net rivaling the IMF's scale. This creates a fascinating dynamic. As more countries lose faith in dollar-denominated assets due to U.S. weaponization of the financial system, they turn to gold. As gold demand increases, prices rise. As prices rise, the latent value in U.S. gold reserves increases. If Trump revalues that gold, it provides massive fiscal flexibility without increasing debt. It's a monetary chess game. China's de-dollarization efforts could inadvertently make America's gold reserves dramatically more valuable, giving Trump room to address fiscal challenges without conventional borrowing. Some economists warn this could be seen as accounting manipulation that undermines confidence in the dollar. Others argue it's a necessary adaptation to a multipolar financial world where the dollar can no longer rely solely on economic dominance. Trump has also expressed interest in auditing Fort Knox, a move that would likely precede any revaluation effort. In February 2025, he announced plans to visit Fort Knox with Elon Musk to verify the gold is still there. It is, according to Treasury Secretary Bessent. So now let's step back and see how these three elements work together. The tariffs create immediate economic pressure and accelerate supply chain diversification away from China. They're the visible, aggressive move that dominates headlines and forces China to negotiate. The crypto strategy positions America as the leader in decentralized digital finance, offering an alternative to China's surveillance-heavy digital yuan. It extends dollar influence through stablecoins while building a Bitcoin reserve that could appreciate dramatically if countries continue moving away from traditional fiat currencies. The gold revaluation potential provides fiscal flexibility and a backstop against dollar decline. If de-dollarization accelerates and the dollar weakens, gold rises, making America's reserves more valuable precisely when dollar dominance is being challenged. Think of this as a three-layer defensive strategy that plays out in stages. First, you have the immediate economic pressure applied through those tariffs. Then, for the medium term, the focus shifts to innovation in digital currency and crypto. Finally, for the long game, gold reserves serve as the ultimate insurance policy. The genius, if it works, is that these elements are mutually reinforcing. Tariffs pressure China economically while supply chains shift. China responds by accelerating de-dollarization, which drives up gold prices and stablecoin adoption. Rising gold prices increase the value of U.S. reserves. Stablecoin adoption maintains dollar relevance in digital transactions. The crypto reserve appreciates as institutional adoption increases. Of course, China isn't sitting still. Beijing's response has been notably strategic. Rather than engaging in tit-for-tat escalation on every front, they focused on building alternative infrastructure. The digital yuan is being deployed systematically. Cross-border trade settlement in yuan has expanded dramatically. CIPS transaction volumes rose 43% in 2024 to 175 trillion yuan, 24 trillion. The mBridge digital currency network built by China with other central banks processed several $billion in 2024. An American official speaking in January 2025 noted that although such payments were still economically insignificant, they had already surpassed a threshold of geopolitical consequence. China has also responded selectively to tariffs. Rather than matching every U.S. tariff dollar for dollar, they've used targeted retaliation, export controls on rare earths, restrictions on specific companies, and strategic tariff placement on politically sensitive U.S. agricultural products. They've also accelerated their Belt and Road Initiative, extending yuan-denominated loans to developing countries and encouraging trade settlement in yuan rather than dollars. Meanwhile, China has continued adding to its gold reserves. While the People's Bank of China paused official purchases after May 2024, analysts believe they continue acquiring gold through unofficial channels. The Chinese strategy appears to be avoid direct confrontation, build parallel infrastructure, and wait for American policy contradictions to create opportunities. And there are contradictions. Trump wants a weaker dollar to help U.S. exporters, but also wants to maintain the dollar's reserve currency status. Those goals often work against each other. No strategy is without risks, and this one has several. First, the tariff escalation. By April 2025, the average applied U.S. tariff rate reached 27%, the highest in over a century. CEOs of major U.S. retailers warned Trump that the trade war with China would lead to visible price increases and product shortages. The approach also sparked multiple legal challenges. In May 2025, the U.S. International Court of Trade unanimously ruled that Trump's IEEPA tariffs were illegal. While the ruling was appealed and tariffs remained in effect through October, the legal uncertainty creates business confusion. There's also the contradiction problem. A JP Morgan analyst noted in May 2025, there's potentially an angle here, which is if Russia eventually gets sanctions relief, does that mean that we have a new stream of petrodollars flowing into the market? The administration is juggling contradictory goals, wanting a weaker dollar while bolstering its reserve currency status. The cryptocurrency strategy has its own challenges. While 19 White House officials hold between $875,000 and $2.35 million in the crypto assets Trump proposed for the reserve, critics argue this creates conflicts of interest. If government holdings legitimize and increase crypto values, officials personally profit. There's also the volatility issue. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies remain speculative assets. A strategic Bitcoin reserve means taxpayer wealth is tied to highly volatile markets. The gold revaluation scenario carries perhaps the biggest risks. Financial markets might interpret dramatic revaluation as a sign of fiscal desperation, potentially triggering currency volatility or capital flight from dollar-denominated assets. Critics call it accounting manipulation and unsound fiscal policy. They worry it would undermine confidence in the dollar and establish an easy money mechanism that encourages irresponsible monetary expansion. There's also the diplomatic risk. By weaponizing economic policy, freezing assets, threatening extreme tariffs, questioning treaty obligations, the U.S. may be accelerating the very de-dollarization it's trying to prevent. Barry Eichengreen, an economics professor at UC Berkeley, who has written extensively about the dollar, warned, the dollar's global role will suffer if the U.S. is perceived as turning its back on its allies. So where does this all lead? In the short term, the tariff negotiations will continue. The November 2025 trade deal between Trump and Xi created a 90-day framework, but fundamental issues remain unresolved. Both sides have shown willingness to negotiate, but also to escalate when needed. The crypto infrastructure is being built in real time. The Genius Act regulatory framework for stablecoins took effect in July 2025. The strategic Bitcoin reserve is established and growing through asset forfeitures. Senator Lummis's Bitcoin Act, which would authorize purchasing 1 million Bitcoin, remains under congressional consideration. The gold question is the wild card. Trump has announced plans to audit Fort Knox, which many see as a precursor to potential revaluation. But no concrete revaluation proposal has been made public as of December 2025. Goldman Sachs forecasts gold could reach $3,300 per ounce in 2025, with some scenarios suggesting $4,000 or higher. Central banks globally continue buying record amounts. This creates conditions where revaluation becomes more economically justifiable and politically feasible. Several scenarios are possible. Scenario 1, status quo. Plus, tariffs remain elevated but stable. The crypto reserve grows through forfeitures without major purchases. Gold reserves remain at official $42 valuation, but market prices continue rising. This maintains current policies without dramatic escalation. Scenario 2, digital dollar victory. Stablecoin adoption accelerates dramatically in emerging markets. The strategic Bitcoin reserve appreciates significantly. And digital dollarization counters Chinese digital yuan expansion. Dollar dominance shifts from traditional banking to crypto infrastructure. Scenario 3, monetary reset. A major fiscal crisis, or dollar confidence, shock triggers gold revaluation to market prices, or higher, providing hundreds of billions in balance sheet improvement and resetting the global monetary system around asset-backed currencies. Scenario 4, de-dollarization. Acceleration. U.S. economic policy contradictions and aggressive weaponization of finance backfire, driving faster de-dollarization than crypto adoption can counter. Gold rises, but dollar status deteriorates faster than reserves can compensate. The most likely outcome? Probably elements of all four, unevenly distributed across time and geography. Let's zoom out one more time to understand what this really means. What we're witnessing isn't just U.S. China competition, it's the potential end of the post-World War II monetary order. For 75 years, the Bretton Woods framework, and later its informal continuation, meant the dollar was the undisputed center of global finance. That system is fracturing. We're moving toward what economists call a multipolar monetary system, where multiple currencies serve as reserves, multiple payment systems compete, and no single nation has the leverage the U.S. has enjoyed. This situation isn't necessarily bad for America, but it does require a totally different playbook. Trump's three-pronged approach seems to recognize that defending the U.S. dollar absolute dominance might actually be impossible at this stage. So instead, the strategy pivots. It attempts to maintain the dollar's relevance through digital innovation, while simultaneously building alternative reserve value with Bitcoin and preserving latent monetary power through gold reserves. For regular people, this isn't just high-level economics. It really matters. It directly impacts the strength of your savings and purchasing power, as well as the price and availability of the goods you buy. On a broader scale, it influences global market stability, geopolitical alliances, and ultimately, the delicate balance between freedom and control in our financial systems. Whether you're American, Chinese, European, or anywhere else, the outcome of this economic competition will shape the financial architecture you operate within for the next several decades. So is Trump's strategy working? It's too early to say definitively. The elements are in place, the strategy is being executed, but the results won't be clear for years. What we can say is this: Trump has assembled a three-pronged approach that addresses different dimensions of the China competition. Tariffs provide immediate economic leverage. Cryptocurrency builds future digital financial infrastructure. Gold reserves provide insurance against dollar decline. Whether this succeeds in maintaining American financial dominance or accelerates the transition to a multipolar monetary system remains to be seen. What's certain is that we're living through the most significant monetary shift since World War II. The decisions being made right now by Trump, by Xi, by central banks worldwide will determine what the global financial system looks like for the next generation. This isn't about one president or one policy. This is about the architecture of money itself being rebuilt in real time. And that's why paying attention to gold reserves, Bitcoin accumulation, and tariff policy is not just about news headlines. It's about understanding the foundation that our economic future is being built on. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the economic forces shaping our world. Drop a comment. What do you think about this strategy? Is Trump playing chess while everyone else plays checkers? Or is this approach accelerating American decline? Whatever your take, one thing is clear.